Now, this is very appropriate. We're going to get to the shout out in a second, but we need to play this here because speaking of MLK, COINTELPRO, and everything, frankly, which you could also track even to the FBI monitoring of people handing out leaflets against clear cutting, okay? And I'm not meaning that as an exaggeration. It's actually pretty extraordinary. This happened on Tucker Carlson the other night. Who's the name of this chap? Do we have this?
Terry Turchie.
Terry Turchie was a former FBI assistant director. Now, just so you know, I think, this is common knowledge of anybody who knows the history of institutions like the FBI, but you're not supposed to say this out loud.
You're supposed to get this from a book that you, only a few, 1,000 people read.
Right.
In the meantime, Terry Turchie was Deputy Assistant Director of the Counterterrorism Division of the FBI, and he joins us tonight. Terry, we originally asked you to come on tonight to talk about border security, but before we do, I want to ask you your response to this back and forth between BuzzFeed and the Special Counsel's Office. What's your take?
Sure, Tucker. Well, I'm a skeptic because of being in law enforcement, but I think it's kind of pretty simple. When you take the election and you take the House and you now convert all the committees that you have to investigating various aspects of the President of the United States, then your lifeblood has to be to react to stories. So you're going to see more stories planted so that all these committees can have a lot of work to do. And I think this is just more of the same. And I think we can expect more of this because, quite honestly, the electorate in some places is putting more and more progressives and self-described socialists in positions. And ironically, years ago when I first got into the FBI, one of the missions of the FBI in its counterintelligence efforts was to try and keep these people out of government. Why? Because we would end up with massive dysfunction and massive disinformation.
All right, I think that's what we need. So one other time, maybe maybe we'll dissect the analysis around the BuzzFeed story and Democrats in Congress is silly. But the much bigger point here is Tucker Carlson, who's with Sean Hannity and all the other sort of water carriers for Trump, are always talking about these deep state conspiracies. Well, he just actually showed you what the actual American deep state looks like. The American deep state, maybe some of them might occasionally be offended by Donald Trump. They might even adamantly oppose Donald Trump and want to put somebody who can responsibly and competently administer American empire. But their historical purpose, as well as their present one, is to, quote unquote, keep these people out of power, which they have done through legal as well as illegal, extrajudicial, and in fact, at times murderous means during the entirety of their history. So thank you, accidentally revealing Tucker Carlson's segment. By the way, he didn't do that on purpose, but for people who cape for Tucker Carlson and his fucking bullshit, that was a public service provided by Tucker Carlson's show.
Yeah.
That should be beamed into every home, on every phone, everywhere in America.
It's surreal to see that just stated like that. Because I remember reading Betty Metzger or something on the FBI and sort of how that stuff was uncovered. And it's just weird how this thing can sort of penetrate media attention, but as a sort of we never really deal with it. It just becomes something that you can have a knowing tone toward. This guy's yeah, everyone knows.
Yeah, I mean everybody knew that. Well, it was something that they would have used to strenuously deny. Yeah, and now it's become a truism.
Say there was some bad apples, basically.
Right.
And it's one of those things where they talk about it, the FBI interventions, as if it's a thing of the past that was happening in the 60s. Having somebody come on today and say, this is literally what we were doing, 20 years ago or so, that's incredible, right?
That
to
is
say
incredible.
That it's still happening in the 90s
that's
and 2000s.
News, breaking news almost.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I mean, it's happening. I mean, it's happening today on every level. We already know that the FBI still monitors, groups. There's been horrifying cases involving Black Lives Matter activists, as an example. And then even on the other end of the spectrum, we also know of entrapment cases, essentially, of basically at times literally cognitively limited people who might be Muslim, essentially getting tricked into fake terrorism plots. We also know that people can absolutely still get on their radar frankly, if you went by a strict definition, you could include watching a Noam Chomsky video on YouTube. it's, yes, enormously dangerous and ongoing today.
Well, and you look at like privatization of the intelligence agencies, which we have like more and more. Like these are also sort of intelligence agencies, and there's a lot of these right wing, like they're off the books. They're not CIA, FBI, or anything. They're just some right wing oligarch money. But that whole system is way more developed now too than it was like years ago.
Yeah,
so
all
like,
these ancillary companies arose outside, especially after the sort of boom time of the war on terror. So you have everything from that's where some friggin' joke like Sebastian Gorka comes from. I mean, somebody like that was going around police departments and saying, this is how you deal with a threat. I mean, on some level, of course, it's a joke, but an incredibly dangerous fascistic joke, as are all of most of the headlines today. You just enjoyed that Michael Brooks Show video, and you can get a lot more by subscribing to us here at the Michael Brooks Show YouTube channel. It's literally right there.